Hi there, welcome to Animation Teacher. This is the second installment in our Learn How to Animate with Flash series. In today's episode, we'll be covering classical animation with Flash, utilizing one of my favorite assignments, the ball and tail. Okay, let's open up Flash. So the first thing we'll do is we're going to open up our new stage, and we'll stick with our standard Full HD at 24 FPS, and we're going to go File, Save As. So today's project will be called Ball and Tail Animation Classical. We'll do another one called Ball and Tail Animation Symbol Animation. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a ground plane. There it is. Let's just thicken up the line a little bit. Six, that should do it. And I'm going to name this ground. Okay, now let's extend it to 90 frames by hitting F5. And we're going to lock the layer and create our rough animation on top. So to get started, let's grab the brush tool. And I'm going to deactivate the pen line, and I'm going to use for the brush animation blue. So these are the options for the brush. We can use pressure sensitivity and tilt. You gotta be sure you're downloading the right driver if you're using a Wacom tablet or a Cintiq. In my case today, I don't have a Cintiq at home. I'm actually using a Intuos 4. So even with the pressure sensitivity and the tilt, I'm not quite liking the quality of the line taper. So I'm just going to go over here and adjust the smoothing. If you turn it down, it becomes a little bit more true to what you actually draw. The higher the smoothing number, the more processed your lines. So here's the first pose, and create a empty frame by hitting F7 or F6 and deleting it, either or. So our next key will be a Antic. A little bit of a squash. So I'm a big fan of roughing out your animation. Even if you decide to do symbol animation, it's a good idea to at least set the roughs for the instances that you're going to build. So here's our next drawing. It's a breakdown, and we're going to do a stretch. So a few things I want to talk about while I sketch away here. In my 10 years of animating, I find the best looking animation comes from anybody who puts a little care in roughing out their work. And I can usually tell if a scene is going to work based off the keys and the sketches that an animator will give me. Usually they'll work out the timing and the posing properly. And if they don't, it's easy to fix because they're just sketches. And I think it's good practice, particularly if you have a challenging shot which you're not quite sure how to approach. It's always good practice because when you get to symbol animation, it's nice to have a working pose so you can draw the instances in the proper perspective and position. For example, this tail here, if we rough it out, we can determine the angle in which it starts to break and slow down and change direction. So the next key here, the ball reaches the apex. And I'm just going to resize it a little bit. What's nice with Flash, as opposed to paper animation, I suppose, is you can resize your work. I tend to go off proportions when I draw on paper, so with Flash, it's nice and easy to resize your work. So here the ball begins to drop, and we'll have to make sure the tail follows the path of action. Now I think it's important to keep in mind the basic rules of animation when you're doing any animation for that matter. Be sure the arc works. You have squash and stretch. You have hang time. And you got to keep the proportions proper. There, that should do it. And you want to be sure the spacing, I'm just going to do a stretch pose right here. You have to make sure the spacing utilizes the proper ease for the particular action. Spacing is so important. Okay, so I'm just tracing the path of action of the tail, and I'm adding some drag to it. Okay, and now the impact and our squash position. Once again, we're following the path of action of the tail, like so. Alright, let's see what it looks like. Okay. Okay, so that looks alright. Now, I'm gonna turn off the onion skin for a second here. Okay, so I'm copying the first frame and I'll drag it over to the end position here. And I'll place it right there. So the reason why I'm doing this is I'm trying to keep it consistent with the start position. Alright, so I'm gonna push the frame ahead and I'm going to add a breakdown for the tail. Okay, so now I'm gonna push the ball up a little bit to get it to ease into the position. Let me readjust the tail. Okay, so as I finish the last few frames here, just to go over what we've covered so far and some shortcuts. We're using the brush tool now, and we're scrubbing left and right on the timeline and drawing instances on the layers and keys. So to create a new key, we hit F6. To create a blank key, we hit F7. To extend an existing key or exposure, we hit F5. To scrub left and right on the timeline, we hit the comma button or the period. The comma button takes us backward, and the period takes us forward. Okay, so we're just about done here. This is the last drawing. Just test out the tail here. Okay, let's turn off the onion skin and check it out. Alright, it's not bad. So I'm gonna time it out now. I'm just highlighting and pulling the keys ahead. The keys are obviously the dots. So you'll see me move the keys forward and backwards just to work out my timing. I have a sense of what I want, but you never know until you play it back. So I'm just gonna add some extra exposures here. That can be on one. Exposure here, here, and here. Okay. Let's clip this off. To clip it off, just highlight the remainder and hit Shift F5. So this is what it looks like. Okay, so let's set up our rough cleanup. And I'm going to use black. And I'll actually turn off my tilt and pressure sensitivity here. Actually, I'm going to turn the pressure sensitivity back on because I kind of want a little bit of a taper. Like this. As you can see, I am drawing incredibly slow. Cleanup usually works best when you one-time it. So for me, I really have to concentrate here. And you'll notice I'm scrubbing back and forth using my comma and period. You know what? Let's make this a skunk tail. Get a nice line in the middle here. There we go. Okay, so because cleanup takes an awful long time, I'm actually gonna pause here and just accelerate the video 5 times the speed. Okay, back to normal speed. If only I could clean up that fast. Alright, I'm going to turn off the sketches and let's have a look at our clean animation. And turn on the onion skin. I think I'm going to need another breakdown here. F7. Okay, so there's the tail. I'm just basically doing a direct in between. I'm going to turn off my onion skin and I'll flip through the tail animation. I have to adjust the base here, it looks a little off. So as I'm flipping here, you'll see that I have to lower the tail a little bit more. Let's see, that works okay. And just erase this nub a little bit and find a happy medium. Alright, that's a straight enough in between. Let's have a look at what it looks like. And there it is. Cleaned up ball and tail animation. I'm just going to adjust a few frames here. I think I might have to add another in between here. So that looks okay. Now once again, this is going to be painfully slow. But hey, that's animation. So that tail looks alright. It snaps back nicely. Okay, so I'm just adding frames by highlighting the 3 layers from top to bottom and hitting F5. And if I want to get rid of anything, I'll highlight from top to bottom and hit Shift F5. So I'm shifting it back to once just to make sure my tail is working properly. Okay, just a little bit more tweaking. I'm going to need a breakdown here for the Antic. So let's give it a fun shape here. It's like a jelly bean. There. I'll erase a little bit in the back so I can put the tail in. Okay, let me just draw through there. And there's the base. Let me erase this and extend the lines down. Okay. And one more in between. So this is for the Antic. I'm just going to favor the bottom position or the Antic position. So whenever I talk about favoring, it basically means that you're trying to duplicate the drawing closest to the drawing that is favored. In this case, the Antic drawing, we have the tail up high and the body of the ball squashed. So that's the Antic, and we're favoring the Antic. So with the onion and skin on, we're drawing closer to the Antic position. There we go. So that's favoring the Antic. And let's just clean it up a little bit. Let's clean this up. And you know what? Let's paint the tail gray. Okay, let's grab the paint bucket. And I'm actually going to adjust the color gray just a little lighter. There we go. Actually, let's go to frame 1 and start there. Okay, so when you can't paint bucket a certain area, you can paint close gaps and open the gaps. And we'll erase this part here. I'll switch this back to paint closed gaps. Okay, we'll have to erase this area here again. And here. And we'll use paint closed gaps. Oh, there's a gap there. Let's go to paint open gap. And we'll finish it up with that. Alright, I'm just going to save first. Okay, let's have a look. Alright, I think it worked out. So that's the ball and tail assignment, classically animated using Flash. Our next segment, we'll take a look at the ball and tail assignment, not classically animated, but animated with symbols. I hope this segment allowed you to see Flash in a more traditional way. Thanks!